COVID-19 is giving us another recession that we have to have. So what does that mean for your business? Can you make it through? Can you actually come out the other side on top? Today on the Vantage Performance podcast, Michael Fingland takes us through the 7 elements you need to adhere to if you're to survive the COVID recession. We don't actually know how long the impact of COVID-19 is going to be felt, but that makes it very difficult, of course, to plan, doesn't it? But plan you must, and Michael Fingland has several steps you should follow if you're going to see your business through this crisis, because now, of course, every business is a business that needs to undergo change. And Michael, I guess it's not just a case of doing the right thing to secure your business, but you've also got to ensure that you've got investors who are confident that their investment in your business is sound and that you're going to guide the business through the other side, particularly if you're going to go to those people and say, well, actually, as part of this process, we're going to need a bit more money as well. You're going to need an enormous amount of confidence from their side to ask questions like that.
That's right. And good morning, Phil. I think the key thing to remember is you need to treat this like any other turnaround. I mean, yes, it's a black swan event and it has a much greater impact on the economy. But the way, when a business owner, board of directors are looking at their business, they need to look at this through the lens of a typical turnaround. And that's why I thought now's a good time to sort of recap on what are the 7 fundamental things that you need to be doing right now to ensure you not only sort of survive through this sort of crazy sort of hibernation period, but also come out stronger at the other end, and then you'll be able to take market share.
Should everyone be doing this? Because there will be some people in some sectors are saying, well, you know what, people are still buying from us. We don't feel as though we've been hit as hard as other sectors in the economy.
There are elements of what we'll run through that every business should be doing, no matter how impacted they are, even if they've grown through this period. One of the key elements to any turnaround is really aggressive stakeholder management. Now, in the absence of knowledge, your customers, suppliers, creditors will be assuming the worst. So you really need to amp up the stakeholder management piece of a typical turnaround plan, even if you're doing well, just to allay those concerns and so they don't react negatively and start putting you on shorter payment terms and on a shorter leash, so to speak. So no, there are elements here that every business should be looking at, even if it's just used as a sense check. Are we doing enough of the following 7 key things? Whether you're in crisis or you're actually doing okay.
Right, okay. And we have talked about a lot of these before, particularly this idea that, you're starting this whole process. You've got to stabilize the business. You've got 100 days to stabilize the business. I mean, that's quite a long time, but I think we are in this thing for the long haul, aren't we? So we have to plan for the long term.
Exactly right. And that's the first step in any turnaround plan is you need to have that cash runway. So every 100-day stabilization plan, as we've talked about before, needs to be accompanied by a 13-week rolling cash flow. So that's 100 days and a 100-day work plan. Again, those 2 things work in tandem. And you use them as a selling tool, as a confidence tool with your financiers as well, because they get a lot of comfort out of seeing those 2 things each week or each fortnight, because they can see how things are progressing, and that just gives them confidence, which is one of the big fundamental things in turnaround. That is the biggest thing in turnaround. It's a game of confidence.
So it's getting rid of the deadwood, basically, as well. A chunk of this, isn't it? Things that are just not working, that are obvious, that can be cut out of the business.
Yeah, non-core surplus assets. You need to be sweating your working capital. Focus on your core business. So while you're going through that first 100-day plan, you're looking at what are those 1 to 2 big changes in strategy, which is the second big pillar of any solid turnaround plan, and really trying to work out how do you streamline the business, as you say, and get back to that core. And that's so critical. Again, when you're trying to rebuild confidence of your stakeholders, that you've got a plan. As you say, you've got rid of the dead wood. You've got a 100-day cash flow. That's the lens that we always look through. Can we keep the business going for at least 100 days? That's one of our litmus tests. And so if you can demonstrate that, and by the time you get to the end of that first 100 days and you're creating the second 100-day runway, a lot of those big ticket initiatives are now rolling into cash flow and earnings in that second 100 days, and you start to build that momentum.
And I guess if it's part of it is getting confidence from your investors, but also so you know what you're doing. I mean, as part of that process, you need to identify what are the real drivers for your business. You're going to sort of create a dashboard so you see what are the things that you really need to track from now on.
Yeah, weekly or daily or weekly dashboards. We're a big user of Power BI and Tableau, common BI tools. So you've got that real-time feedback. But as you say, what are the it's hard for a lot of businesses to do this, but come down to what are the top 3 KPIs or business drivers that really make an impact on your business. Just really focus on those. Check in on the other ones. You'll have up to 10 or so that you look at every quarter or so, but what are the 3 big ones that you really need to focus on? And that, of course, comes off the back of, once you've worked out what are those 1 to 2 big changes in strategy. So you've got a really strong, streamlined business model to focus on.
And that's the key, isn't it? I mean, that second point, which we're on to now, that 1 or 2 big changes in strategy, because you can't go through this continuing life as normal, because life is not normal, and we're not quite sure, sadly, we're not quite sure if it ever be normal again, Michael.
No, and that's why this sort of 100-day focus, if you try and sort of forecast for 2 years out, you're kidding yourself. I mean, in any turnaround, it's very difficult to do that. But in this current environment, there's so much constant change with this virus, you just can't do that. So just lock into those sort of 100-day mindsets and refresh your plan as you're getting towards that first 100 days. But by the end of that first 100 days, you should have those 1 to 2 big changes already worked out. You've got a stable business. You've got your second 100-day plan sort of about to roll out. You've worked out what the business model is going forward. It could be the same, but you might have made some pretty fundamental changes, and then that becomes the bedrock of your second 100-day plan if you are making some strategic changes. But there's always non-core surplus assets, lazy working capital that you can sweat. Look at securitizing the balance sheet, certain assets on there like debtors and hard assets to free up more working capital. Negotiating standstill agreements with your key creditors. And that sort of feeds into the second or the third big pillar, which is stakeholder management and communication. And as we've said many, many times before, stakeholder management needs to be at least 50% of what you're doing, particularly that first 100 days, if not the second. And it's a key marker for us is, are we spending at least 50% of our time on stakeholder management? And that's why most businesses fail. Yeah.
What happens if your stakeholders don't agree with the approach you're taking? If you identify those 1 or 2 big changes in strategy and they're going, well, don't really agree with that.
Well, it's your job to show them why the plan is the right plan. We've never had a situation where the plan that we've presented is not adopted. I mean, if you do that for a living and you just know how to identify what's working, what's not, how the market's moving, what's the right business model to adapt to these conditions. But a lot of businesses, they grow into a lot of other areas along the way in the pursuit of growth, and often they end up not making money, or it's very marginal, but they've soaked up a lot of working capital and their overhead structures become quite heavy trying to manage all these other things they're doing. So, when we come into a situation, is usually it's sticking out like the proverbial. I mean, and as I say, if you're good at what you're doing, you know how to convince is not the right word. It actually unfolds naturally once you've done the analysis. So, it's very, very rare that you might have resistance.
Right. But when you're talking about those 1 or 2 big changes, I mean, I'm thinking, this is a sweeping change. You're going to get rid of a whole suite of products and just focus on 1 or 2. But it might not be quite as grand as that, might it? It might just be tweaking some things at the edges, so a more productive way of working, for example.
Yeah, it may not be a 180 degree turn. It could just simply be, we had a business that was making money around sort of 3 core offerings, and now we've got 10. And once you've done the work, and often they don't have the financial systems to tell them where they're making money, where they're not. So again, the numbers will tell you, actually, of those 7, well, 5 of the 7, we're actually losing money, or it's marginal at best. Why bother? And once you actually, sell down, close that part of the business, if you like, that then recycles capital very quickly back into the business that you can then use to drive growth in those 3 core areas. So one of the big questions we always ask is, when we're coming to try and work that out, is what did we look like when we were last making good money? And it's a very quick process. You go, well, actually, we were just really good at these 3 things. And we let ourselves
which comes onto you
distracted.
Exactly. And part of that distraction, I guess, and sometimes I'm sure it's done for all the right reasons. So you introduce a new product or you go down a new line thinking this is going to be profitable. This is the obvious next step for us to take. And then that doesn't happen. And you don't actually step back and go, oh, well, we went in this direction. It's not working for us. We need to pull back now. It's just become an established part of the business. And that's why, number 4, what's the game that you're really in? Have you got too far away from it? Do you need to go back to basics?
Yeah, and we've talked a lot about Simon Sinek and the power of why, what's your sense of purpose? But that question, what game are you really in? It's such a powerful question. If you get your whole team together and you sit there and you really ponder that question, the answer will come out of that, and that helps you drive back to, what did the business look like when we really enjoyed it, when we got out of bed every morning and couldn't wait to get to work. It's all tied in with that, and if, again, you've got to have a workforce that's really passionate about what you're doing. If you're just manufacturing products that every other company does, it's hard to motivate the workforce. But if you have got that really core offering, and again, what game are you really in? What's the big impact you're trying to have? What's the big problem you're trying to solve? We're a big believer in questions are really powerful. The answers always follow, but you've got to ask the right questions, and that running through a why workshop really helps you unearth what do we want to be doing? Why do this? Yeah. We've got to be passionate about it.
And I imagine that you see the passion come back from that as well. You start to see the workforce following. Yeah, because everyone all of a sudden is saying now we are a standout from our competitors because we've got this focus. Yeah. So
and we talk so much. Sorry, Phil. We talk so much about stakeholder management, but it's not just financiers. You got to remember, the employees, particularly in a time of crisis like this, they're looking for someone just to lead the way and tell us we're going to be okay. So again, when you can articulate that, we used to do these 10 things, we're going to pull back to these 3 core things, we're actually going to be more successful. We might be smaller, but we're more profitable. We'll actually make more dollars, and then we can use that as a base to grow again.
Yeah, you do have the problem though that workforce. You might not take them all with you. So that creates problems as well, doesn't it? Because you've got to keep people motivated while they're also seeing perhaps some of their colleagues disappear.
Potentially, but not always, because as you are pulling back from, say, in this case, 10 core offerings to 3. To make an example, that throws off a lot of working capital for cash flow. And then what you can do is redivert those employees that were involved in those other areas back into those 3 core areas to grow them. So you can actually, if you've got an open mindset and you say, well, yesterday you were on the production line, tomorrow I want you working with the marketing team on how to roll this out. We need to go out and canvass a whole bunch of customers and get some really good intel. So if you're prepared to actually work across the spectrum and redeploy people, we're big believers in Barry Waymiller. Everybody Matters. His breakthrough book on that is, don't always go to the redundancy lever first. If you can hang on to that workforce and redeploy them into R&D and marketing other areas, then you'll actually come out of this much faster and keep your culture intact.
Yeah, and you don't have to pay redundancy payments as well if you're just looking at the numbers behind it all. So what about number 5 then, paying down debt? So you're not so highly leveraged. Although, couldn't there be a case where you say, well, okay, actually there's an opportunity for growth here. We perhaps need more debt.
Yes, but the way financiers work is you need to give them confidence that you can reduce their debt first. They need it. Every financier wants to see sort of 6 months or 9 months of de-gearing, if you like, to prove that you've followed through on your business model, you've rationalised the business, you've stripped out all the lazy working capital by realigning your business back to your core, and paying some debt down. It doesn't have to be huge, but it's a mindset.
To show it can be done. If you can, you're not reliant.
It forces you to look.
Yeah,
that's right. But it forces you to look for those non-core surplus assets that you can sell for debt reduction. And then when you're into that sort of growth phase, you're more likely to get the additional capital to then fund that, because it's a dedicated growth strategy, and we're borrowing money to fund this growth engine over here. So you always need to be looking for ways to pay down debt, because it just resets the bank's confidence, and they're more likely to give you more debt in 6 to 9 months' time when you do need it.
And linked to all of that, strong financial management. So you as you're pulling that debt down, you're saying the reason we're able to do this is because, and here's the spreadsheet that shows it all.
You can't track how you're going real time, and you can't build confidence unless you can demonstrate to your financiers that you've got daily, weekly financial operational dashboards, you've got a 13-week cash flow, you've got 3-way forecasts, you've got the 100-day plan ticking along, being managed every day. All those tools give not only the board and the management team confidence that we're on the right path, and we've got feedback, real-time feedback, so we can make changes and be nimble along the way. But your financiers, that's just if you want to get more money out of the financiers, you need to show them you've got a really strong and accurate data set that you can make informed decisions on.
Finally, and look, I spent a lot of my my business career in marketing, proper marketing, not just marketing comms, but your 4 P's marketing. I don't know how many P's marketing is. And in my day, it was just 4 P's. It was getting the right product in the right place and promoting it right. But in tough times, very often companies, the marketing department is the first place to cut. They go, well, okay, they are an expense. We're going to cut them right back. But your point 7 is no, you need to maintain that focus on marketing and also R&D. You've not got to cut those areas, and because that's the future, obviously.
First big mistake companies make is they take a red pen to that, as you say. Now, the quick example of why this is so crucial to keep investment in this space, because when you get through, and I'm not saying don't make any changes, right? If there are programs and campaigns you're running that aren't really working, obviously pare them back, but you need to have a core continuation. When you come out of this downturn, any downturn, right? Whether it's 6, 12, 18 months time, do you want to be that company that is still selling the same old products and services to the market? And guess what? Now you're having to do it at a discount because everyone is still selling the same old, and you end up in that downward spiral of price cutting. Or do you want to be releasing a new product to the market where you can actually charge a premium and use that to also to take market share? It's a no-brainer when you look at it through that lens. So if you're not going to continue that investment, guess what? Once you've come out of this, you've then got another 12, 18 month lag time before you start releasing new products to the market, and you've missed a massive opportunity. So again, this is why we want to talk about all 7 things together. If you're paying down debt, you're getting back to your core, you're freeing up a lot of working capital so you can maintain your workforce, hopefully in full, and redeploy them to those core areas, and you can retain the investment in R&D and marketing, so you can drive that innovation and come out of this actually much stronger than what you came into it.
You're more nimble, isn't it? That's
more nimble.
That's the word. So not everyone can do this themselves, which is why companies like yours are around. But you can only do so much. So can all the other companies working in this space. And we're saying every company needs to do this. So a lot of companies are going to have to go through this by themselves, aren't they?
They are, and that's why we're quite happy to get this sort of IP out there, because, as you say, we're not going to be able to help everyone. And the turnaround industry as a consulting industry is still fairly small in the grand scheme of things. So, if we can provide, a framework, markers, through these sort of podcasts and other forums to give them, tips along the way and a framework, then they'll be able to at least apply that, and they'll have a much better chance to get through this mess and to not only survive, but, as corny as it sounds, thrive on the other side.
All right, well, very good. That's why we're here. Great to talk, as always, Michael. We'll catch you again very soon. Thank you.
Cheers, Phil.
And if you haven't heard them already, Michael does a weekly turnaround tip. It's just a short, pithy, succinct explanation of something you need to focus on without me wittering on. So perhaps a more effective way of getting across all of this. But we'll be back again with another podcast soon. I'm Phil Dobby. He's Michael Fingland. Thanks for listening. Catch you next time.